Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel.
Get it out. Yeah, everyone get the jokes out.
Get it all out.
I don't know if you're cutting this or not, but I think it's more fun. Put it in an appendix.
I'm going to have to cut out some of it.
I drive a car.
I drive the car faster.
So you want
My brother died 25 years ago.
Do you think if he makes another Italian film, Adam Driver, like on this level in House of Gucci, like it's 3 strikes and you're out, and he's just banned from going to Italy ever again?
Did he kind of do that with Megalopolis?
Ooh.
Go back to the club.
That's so funny.
I mean, Megalopolis does take from kind of the Roman Empire and everything. So
I think he struck out.
Yeah.
I don't think he can ever attempt an Italian accent again.
He's in
Italy jail again. Sorry.
No.
Italy jail?
Italy, yeah, go to jail. Straight to jail.
Put him in the Coliseum.
All right. Ferrari.
This is Why Wasn't It Better? And I am your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm Anton Paras.
And I'm Garret
You want to do 2 different versions of that, Anton?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Should I even introduce myself after that, or should I just log off?
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
And we have a longtime favorite return guest, Garret Ohringer. Welcome back.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here at the Mille Miglia with you 2 gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to talk Ferrari.
So good to have you. How have you been?
I've been very well. For listeners who haven't heard from me in a while, I got married a few months ago.
Woo, mazel.
Post-marital bliss, thank you very much, is going great. We are doing well. We're going on our honeymoon to Australia and New Zealand during Christmas. Just booked our Australian Open tickets, so looking forward to all of that. But really looking forward to talking about cars, because I'm a guy and I love cars.
You love cars so much, you live in a place where you can never drive them.
Exactly. I live in a place where I own a Zipcar membership, and that's more than half of what New Yorkers can call ownership of a car.
Well, you can love a car because even if you can't drive it, life is a highway.
That was maybe the best joke I've ever heard in my entire life. Listeners, you cannot see my face, but it just had absolute disdain, and I'm being completely sarcastic in my response to Anton there.
Now, it's not that car movie that we're talking about.
Ugh, I wish we were talking about cars instead. Anyhow.
We are talking about Ferrari.
Yes, we are.
A really, really quick bit of admin before we get back to Anton's stand-up routine. Just a reminder to the listeners that if you like what you hear and you really want to support us, we have a Patreon, and joining it will give you access to things like early episode access a week before they come out to the rest of the public, the ability to request movies yourself. If you like a film and you want us to cover it on the podcast the very same season, you can join the Patreon and we'll do it. And by the way, all of those offerings are ad-free. So if you want to hear our episodes without advertisements, you can do it by joining the Patreon.
But you still have sponsors and ads. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you won't say no.
We will not say no. Last episode, we wrapped up our Christmas mini season with the Polar Express. This episode will be coming out a couple of days after Christmas because on this podcast, unlike others who take, holiday breaks, we actually do the opposite. We give our listeners multiple episodes per week. We figure a lot of people are off from work. Maybe they need something to listen to. Maybe they're at work and they need something to listen to. So we did this last year. We released, Anton, what was it, 3 or 4 episodes in a week?
We released 4 because it was quite the holiday season.
Yeah. So we're going to keep that tradition going. I don't know if either of you noticed, this is a Negroni.
I was going to ask. I was like, that looks like just Campari over here. It's very red, I will say.
Yeah.
But as someone who drinks Campari and sodas regularly, I've been to Italy, dear listeners.
And I'm drinking a cappuccino.
I'm
Excellent.
drinking aqua.
Sorry, listeners, you're going to get a lot of this episode.
Honestly, just fast forward 20 minutes and
Yeah,
we're
look,
getting it all
listeners,
out of our system.
if you have a problem with unnecessary Italian accents, first of all, you shouldn't watch this film because there's no Italian actors in this as far as I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That
So
is right.
if you have a problem with it, talk to Michael Mann, not us.
Here's a question. Sorry for a quick digression, but listeners know I love them. I think Chris Pratt does a better Italian accent as Mario than anybody else in this movie.
Even then, it's like a Italian accent removed because he's in New York, right?
Yes. Like he's an Italian American, but still, I don't
Right.
think that's hot of a take. Like I think
Yeah.
his
Not a hot
accent
take.
is more
I agree with
Italian
you.
passing than especially like Shailene Woodley's.
You know,
Irish
that's a really,
actress Shailene Woodley?
I love Matteo Lane. Have you guys heard his Italian accent?
No.
Super funny stand-up comedian, great Italian accent. Also, I have to give a shout out to the Italian chef that's in the what is it? The Chuck E. Cheese crew.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, there's the Italian chef. He does a great accent.
How many times did you actually watch the show at Chuck E. Cheese? Because I was way more concerned with eating my pizza as fast as possible to get back to Papa Shot.
It was always riveting for me.
I could see that. I could see you critiquing that at age 7.
I'm going to move the conversation forward.
It's a good
Let's
idea.
do it.
Set in the summer of 1957 with Enzo Ferrari's auto empire in crisis, the ex-racer turned entrepreneur pushes himself and his drivers to the edge as they launch into the Mille Miglia, a treacherous 1,000-mile race across Italy, in an effort to save the company from financial ruin. Ferrari was released on December 25th, 2023 by, just prepare yourselves for this, Moto Pictures, Forward Pass, Storyteller Productions, STX Films, Ketchup Entertainment, Esme Grace Media, Rocket Science, Cecchi Gori USA, Iervolino and Lady Bacardi Entertainment, Bliss Media, Le Grisby Productions, and the Red Sea Film Fund for a total of 12 production companies, which might be a record. I've never seen that many on a film that we've covered. It was directed by Michael Mann. The screenplay was written by Troy Kennedy Martin, based on Enzo Ferrari, The Man, the Cars, the Races, the Machine by Brock Yates, starring Adam Driver, Penelope Cruz, Shailene Woodley, Sarah Gadon, Gabriel Leone, Jack O'Connell, and Patrick Dempsey. The budget was $110 million, and the box office, $42 million. Garret, as today's guest, why did you want to talk about Ferrari?
As someone who loves Michael Mann more than he loves the metaphor of masculinity is a prison, I am always just happy to talk Michael Mann films too. I remember hearing about production of this movie for years upon years. I'm sure, Pat, you're going to get into all of this too about the troubled production history about it. But hearing when Michael Mann picked it up sounded exactly like a movie I wanted to watch. I feel like it's almost an unfair comparison to put this movie against Ford vs. Ferrari by James Mangold from a few years earlier. But I was really excited to see a movie that kind of explored the inner turmoil of a man's ability to achieve greatness while skewing basically his personal life and everything else that matters to him too. That said, and we'll get into this, the result, the sum was less than its parts, I will say too. But nonetheless, there's some fantastic ideas explored here. I honestly had a lot of fun with this movie too. And it's very memeable and something that I think I can laugh about a lot, as I think we are already getting into. So it's just an all around good time. And I get to talk with you guys about it and Michael Mann, two of my favorite things.
We had you on last season to talk The Insider.
Yes, we did.
Which I don't know what I liked more, the film or the discussion we had about it, because that was fantastic. I am a Michael Mann fan as well. And I say this as someone who was looking at his filmography, and it may have been 20 years since he made a film I actually love. That's how much I like Michael Mann. And you're right, Garret. This one had been in the making for a long time. It was very much a passion project for him.
Michael Mann, by the way, I just want to say, like, his just life of unrealized projects, or the amount of effort he puts into getting projects he has realized off the ground, like, is an amazing kind of like biopic in and of itself. Like, if he could direct his own life and man's futility around the story of him trying to get his own movies made, that would be like a perfect Charlie Kaufman screenplay right there.
So fair to say, a bit ambitious.
Yes, I think that is a perfectly articulated statement right there.
I completely agree. He's a real artist. You know, when I think of him as like a filmmaker, he's not what you would call an entertainment guy,
But
right?
he
He's
makes
not an entertainer.
entertaining films, or at least entertaining scenes within his films. We can,
Oh,
yes,
100%, but he would never admit that.
yes, yes. Like, I don't think he thinks the shootout in Heat is fun, or the boxing scenes in Ali are like.
I don't think he understood just how hilarious Pacino's dialogue is in Heat.
I could have a whole discussion on this, but
But
digressions aside, you
he's
cannot be more
over
correct.
80 years old at this point. We're going to cover a bunch of his films on this podcast, and we're going to celebrate him because, frankly, he may not be around that much longer, and he's one of the greats. I even have time for some of his bad movies like Black Hat. I think Black Hat's a bad movie. We're going to cover it, and I know it's going to be interesting to talk about. Garret, you saw this in the theater. You were one of 302 people that did.
That's right, I was.
I didn't see it because of how hilariously bad this film was marketed. It was one of those films where I was like, oh, Ferrari, I should see that. And then Christmas went by. I had family in town for the holidays. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna see it because it's Michael Mann doing Ferrari. I know it'll look good on a big screen. And I think like 2 weeks went by and I forgot about it. And then it was just out of theaters. It was done.
Here's a question I want to pose to both of you. Do you think Michael Mann is the most incorrectly marketed director in Hollywood? As in, like, his movies are never properly marketed for what the movie actually is. We've seen it with The Insider. We've seen it, obviously, with Ferrari. I'm sure we can go back, but those are two clear examples that stick out. And yes, I'm clearly promoting the episodes of this podcast that I have been on to.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a usual suspect in that sense, but I think that just speaks to the complexity of the films Mann puts out. And how do you properly market that to a large audience? I think people often much more understand like a traditional biopic, which this is not. So I think it just kind of comes with the territory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why I feel like when you're marketing a Mann film, you're kind of marketing almost to like the people who are already going to see it. Like, my point being is that the marketing of Michael Mann films never convince people on the fence or people who don't often go to the movies to see these films. They try to market the marketable aspects. And I've said that word way too many times, so it's losing all of its meaning now. But my point is, I remember with all of the marketing, seeing Penelope Cruz versus Adam Driver and Shailene Woodley being a part of it too, and not really just being it about a cold man who literally has a second family and hates everything and has no empathy for the world.
What I would say to your question is I think he personally seems almost allergic to the concept of marketability, because if you look at something, I couldn't even tell you what his most financially successful movie is. It might be Heat, it might be Last of the Mohicans. I honestly don't know. Right off the top of both of your heads, like, what is the most commercially successful movie of his that should have been? It's an easy answer. It's Miami Vice.
Miami Vice.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's probably
Right.
the most down the
Right.
plate fastball of a movie
Right.
that he's
If you're
made.
looking at it on paper, you're like, well, that was an enormously successful TV show. He is making a film based on that with a young up-and-comer, Colin Farrell, and an Oscar winner, Jamie Foxx. This should be a $400 million movie in 2006. And of course, what does he do? He subverts all expectations. I guarantee you he didn't make the studio happy with the end result. He basically made a $150 million art house movie.
Yeah, and it was marketed like a Michael Bay movie, which was obviously very in at the time, that style.
And it wasn't that at all.
Nope.
No.
But my point is, to answer your question, Garret, this is a very run-on answer, is I don't think he ever thinks about marketability at all, and I think his films are better off for it. Now, the catch of that is I am amazed he was able to get a $110 million budget for Ferrari, and I don't know if he'll ever get something like this again. Like, we all kind of want to see Heat 2. I'm willing to bet it won't make money.
You were right, by the way. Adjusted for inflation, Heat, highest grossing film of all time.
Is it really?
Not adjusted for inflation would be Collateral at $220 million.
Interesting. That doesn't surprise me. He just
65%
doesn't
of
do
its gross.
blockbusters. He doesn't do them.
Mm-hmm.
But he's willing to, he wants to take concepts and figures that appeal to a mass audience, but tell his own way or tell his own story and art through those figures.
I think one thing you also have to appreciate, and I think this is something we're kind of losing with film recently and how studios finance films, but this is a man who's such a slave to his craft. And he says, if I don't have the budget or the technical capabilities to shoot this, then I won't shoot this. We know this is a thing with Collateral, with how he shot nighttime scenes. That wasn't technology that existed before then, too. Heat, too, has one of the greatest sound design scenes in any movies in film history as well. Same thing with Ferrari. The production design, set design, like, let's be honest, it's pure scenery porn with all of those 1,000 miles through Italy, too, in the final race in this film as well. So the man is a slave to his craft, which you can also say is very similar to artists like maybe a Ridley Scott, for example, too, but less so about blockbuster CG heavy movies of today. That's a whole separate discussion that I know I am way shortchanging the actual weight to put on it, but it is something I can really appreciate in his films.
No, you're absolutely right. And we talked about this on the Insider episode. Everything you just mentioned is correct, and that's why we love Michael Mann.
Exactly. And I love detail.
This film has a lot of detail. So it came out a year ago. Anton, this is something of a tradition for us now where, you and I, we don't cover a lot of new films. That's by design. Our podcast is supposed to be retrospective. And we have sort of accidentally fallen into this trend of covering films a year after their release, which was I would say, a pleasant accident on our part, because I really like the idea of just talking about a movie a year after its release. It's new enough that you still think of it as a newer film, but after a year, you have plenty of time to not only think about it, but also there's a lot of really useful production information that comes out in the 4, 5, 6, 7 months after a film's released that we can use.
Totally. And I think one of the areas that I love thinking about after a film's been released for like a year is how has public perception changed over that time? Initial reaction can always be very polarizing. Sometimes some films need a bit of time to simmer and really see how has that recent history changed that perception. And we will see if perception has changed for Ferrari in a year. But shall we dive into the production history?
We shall. Although I do want to say I don't think it's changed at all. I still don't know many people that have seen it.
I'll be honest, even before you guys asked me to come on this podcast to talk about it, I probably had not thought of the film since I had seen it in theaters too. And that's someone who is way biased to loving Michael Mann.
72% Rotten Tomatoes score. Audience score was about the same. So, production history for Ferrari. We mentioned this in the intro. This film is primarily based on the 1991 biography Enzo Ferrari, The Man, the Cars, the Races, the Machine by motorsports journalist Brock Yates. Michael Mann had been interested in making this as far back as 2000, possibly earlier, when he first discussed the idea with director Sidney Pollack. I want to give a special shout out to Sidney Pollack, no longer with us. One of my all-time favorite directors, right up there with Michael Mann.
Yeah, legend.
Yeah. We're covering one of his films
rules.
early next season as well, Anton.
Jeremiah Johnson?
No.
3 Days of the Condor?
Nope. I guarantee you won't guess it.
No, not Eyes Wide Shut. That's Kubrick. What am I saying?
No.
Sabrina.
The Firm.
Nope. You won't guess it.
Interpreter?
Nope.
That's all I got.
Out of Africa.
Yeah, but you guessed.
Garrett has no reaction.
Yeah,
the reason why we're going to cover it is frequently included on the lists of worst best picture winners of all time. So I was like, sounds like we should cover it.
Have fun.
We will. Amazing John Barry score. That's right, John Barry. Fuck yeah. All right. Mann collaborated on the screenplay with writer Troy Kennedy Martin, who was best known for writing the screenplay to the original Italian Job and the 1985 British TV film Edge of Darkness. I honestly don't know what that is, but I wanted to include it because it seemed famous. According to Mann, in an interview with The Guardian, Martin actually wrote the original draft of the screenplay back in the 90s, before the two had met. At one point, prior to Mann's involvement, Clint Eastwood was interested in directing. And I actually think Eastwood would have done a great job with a film like this, because he has an appreciation for race car driving, I think. Martin, the screenwriter, passed away in 2009, but Mann kept his script as the source for the film. Despite rewriting it several times, Martin remains as the sole credited writer. Now, Mann originally sought to make the film as part of his deal with Disney in the early 2000s, and he told The Guardian, quote, "I could have made it at any time as a small independent movie for 25 to 30 million, but the movie should never be made that way." Continued. In the US market, they thought that racing movies never made money, end quote. Well, they didn't. Mann optioned the project around Hollywood for years, and in 2015, the film came close to getting made. Garrett, this is probably what we read at the time. Christian Bale entered negotiations to play Enzo Ferrari, and Paramount agreed to finance the project. However, in early 2016, Bale dropped out because he didn't have enough time to gain the necessary weight for the role.
Honestly, I feel like he can use that as a crutch for any movie in his lifetime, both present and in the future, and everyone has to believe it. He's got the track record.
He does. And just for the record, I think Bale would have done a wonderful job with this.
We're going to get into it, but the incestuous nature of this and Ford versus Ferrari and kind of the overlap in production of the both, I agree. I think I'd rather see him in this film than Christian Bale in Ford versus Ferrari.
And no coincidence, Mann is an executive producer on that film. Which, by the way, Ford versus Ferrari is an awesome movie. I really like that movie.
Top tier dad film. Top tier.
Super entertaining.
Yeah.
The project stalled until April 2017 when Hugh Jackman entered negotiations to portray Ferrari and Noomi Rapace as his wife, but this fell through. Nothing happened until the success of the Formula One Netflix documentary Drive to Survive, which Mann credits as the reason for the film being greenlit. It was also the reason for everyone suddenly talking about Formula One. At this point, Hugh Jackman's name was still attached. By 2022, Jackman was out and Adam Driver was cast due to his performances in Logan Lucky and Marriage Story. STX Entertainment agreed to finance 70% of the budget and also acquire the North American distribution rights. The rest of the financing came from the Italian tax credit and private investors. Officially, the budget was $95 million, but Michael Mann stated in an interview that it was actually $110 million. Principal photography began in August 2022 on location in Modena, Italy. Filming also occurred in Brescia before wrapping up in October. Strangely, the film's financier, STX Entertainment, planned to premiere Ferrari on Showtime and Paramount Plus in the United States instead of theatrically releasing it through their deal with Lionsgate, but eventually decided to license the United States distribution rights to another theatrical distributor, Neon. Now, Neon paid $15 to $17 million for the United States distribution rights, later scheduling for the film for a wide theatrical release in the United States on Christmas 2023. Neon also spent around $7 million to market the film in the United States. It's said that the Red Sea Film Fund from Saudi Arabia entered into the film as executive producers in exchange for cash, which helped finance Neon's P&A. And that is the production for Ferrari.
And before we get into the discussion, we are going to take a brief ad break. Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel.
The number one reason why this film wasn't better, the storytelling.
Possibly related to the storytelling, but I just once again want to point out 12 production companies involved with the making of this film. That's hilarious.
I mean, we always talk about films where enough of the script changes hands or even just the project changes hands or a lot of cooks in the kitchen. It's a recipe for sometimes disaster, usually.
I don't think Michael Mann would ever do a film by committee, and I don't think he would have done this without having final say over the script, but I cannot get over how many production companies that is. I've never seen that many. Like 4 is a lot, and this has 12.
I remember remarking in theaters, these are the longest opening credits. Like, that's how you know when movies can either just be like real leaps of faith by the director or the creators, when you kind of have 12 different title cards before the title of your film even appears.
Well, it was confirmed, right? Like, what, 2 of the studios are even just not even real production companies. They're just shell companies.
Yeah.
Sounds
the
like
Red Sea Film Fund.
I'm going to call shenanigans on that one.
Yeah, that's whatever that is. It's like Manchester City sponsorship deals. There's soccer reference for all you soccer fans out there.
There's one
that
other...
joke lands.
If you take a look actually at a fellow story director, Martin Scorsese, you can see a few couple shell companies that were part of the production companies involved with The Wolf of Wall Street. So it's not uncommon.
I have to say, so I've seen this movie 4 times now. All
Wow.
4 times. Well, in fairness, I fell asleep through one of them, so it's like 3 and a quarter. All 3 or 4 times I've seen this movie, I just started laughing with the old-timey black and white footage that opens the film. Maybe they thought that it looked cool when they made it. It looks awful.
Mann is definitely his biggest critic and says, yeah, I could edit this out, or that doesn't work. But he was like, no, this is how I'm going to capture this time right here.
It was Adam Driver in the footage, right?
Minus all the prosthetics and everything. He
Yeah,
actually looks his age,
oh my gosh.
which
It's
we'll get to those prosthetics in a bit.
Yeah.
the first half of this film is brutal. I don't know. It's sort of filmed like a soap opera. We're getting Enzo Ferrari dealing with marital issues, financial issues, neither of which are resolved at the end of the film.
I think it's important for listeners to kind of think about what is a traditional biopic and how does this kind of deviate from that if a listener hasn't seen this film. I think that even previous Mann films that kind of have like these like biographical focused film, you think of Ali. Ali was a bit more over the span of life. This is a more focus on like a very particular moment and then using different moments in that life to, I guess, connect the dots on like what happened previously. I don't feel like the actual pacing of the film helped to connect those dots as effectively as people would like.
It takes place literally over the summer of 1957 and is billed as a biopic. I don't know if you can call that a biopic, but rather a few moments in a person's life. Yes, very defining for both himself, his company, and racing at large, but still, to call it a biopic versus...
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. It's a lot of the conversations. It's like, well, this is why our marriage is the way it is, or this is why he is in his certain place in life, is, again, kind of move through the different discussions or like through long ass conversations, basically.
The
in
movie's,
the film,
frankly, more interested in peeling back the details of Ferrari's family life and just his pursuit to make Ferrari the premier exotic car company in the world. Well, not exotic car company at the time, but how his vision for the company basically eschews, like I said before, everything in his personal life. And that's what the film is really focused on examining, especially in those first 30 minutes that you alluded to, Pat.
I think I may zag here. I prefer this kind of biopic to the traditional one. Anton, here's a very low-hanging fruit example that we covered a couple of weeks ago with Napoleon, where it was trying to hit all the greatest hits of Napoleon's life. I don't think that's ever interesting to me. I would much prefer something like this, where they're actually trying to tell you about a specific yet pivotal period of time in this individual's life.
You know what's really interesting? That's actually a really good kind of point. I would agree with you in that a lot of biopics are kind of treated as anthropological, not so much examining the character, but rather kind of the life they lived and the events that have transpired during their lives. Whereas Mann, as we know in all of his films, is more focused on the individual and their pursuit of some Sisyphean goal too. And I think what's very interesting is when we read biopics, for example, or autobiographies, we're learning about what makes that person tick. Not so much that they did this cool thing or this amazing thing happened in their life due to their work, but rather what makes them tick that drove them to such a nature to accomplish those goals in life. And that's what I feel like Mann was really going for in examining, again, Ferrari's personal life rather than the rise of Ferrari itself. Do you guys see where I'm kind of coming from over here? Like, I almost feel like he tries to get to the character versus the situation.
I see what you're saying. I think like probably that kind of plays into the expectations of the trailers marketed for this film. It almost looked like, wow, like we're going to really get an in-depth look at the rise of Ferrari, or how did Ferrari get to like the status, or how did Ferrari get to the status as a company today? But that's not what we got.
That's barely what the movie focuses on, really, minus trying to get funding to not go bankrupt. Outside of that particular situation in the movie, it's really not explored in that regard, to your point, Anton.
I think when we actually get to the racing scenes, which they showed in the trailer, they are very well filmed. It almost reminded me of the trailer that we were talking about for The Insider, where like they were showing a lot of the courtroom scenes, and the courtroom scenes in The Insider are like 5 minutes of the 2-hour and 40-minute movie that The Insider is. Kind of similar here. Now, before I really start to rag on this film for what I didn't like, this was shot by cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt, and I want to give him a shout out. He's an Academy Award winner. He's a great director of photography. This is a very good looking film. And often on this podcast, Anton, we have been critical of films that are shot digitally. Michael Mann knows how to use digital film. This is a beautiful looking film. I think it's pretty hard to mess up a 1950 Italian setting, and Mann does not mess it up. This is a great looking movie. I do want to give Mann and the cinematographer a lot of credit here. It looked like it was filmed in 1957. The setting, it's just so visually appealing, right?
Yeah.
And I was surprised this was not nominated for an Academy Award for the cinematography because it looks amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Again, Mann clearly takes great care in making sure the production design feels like 1957. And you're so right,
Yeah.
Messerschmidt. I mean, the guy works with Fincher, Ridley Scott, and Michael Mann, and those are pretty much the only big time directors he's worked with. It's a pretty good trio of directors to have under your
not
belt.
bad.
So yeah, not bad at all. But you're so right. Like everything just looks true to form. You feel like you're in 1957.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much attention to detail here, whether we're looking at the costuming, the background. I feel like just being able to capture just the beauty of the scenery, I feel like that's where the film really comes to life, is just, it does very much have that visually stunning appeal. But I think that it's in the story that, and the, how do I put this? The mundanity of it all. It just doesn't really kind of capture that same interest that I would if I even think of like a much more riveting look at different character pieces. Like, I know, Pat, you may not be as a big of a fan as of Ali, right?
No, the movie sucks.
But I think I always was really interested kind of more in the structure of the story, looking at Ali, looking at each big fight and how it was the big fights that kind of were the kind of totem pieces of that film. But I didn't really quite get the same, attachment to the story and the movement here. I felt like the Ferrari that we got was very cold and detached.
I feel like we're going to get into actors, so I want to kind of save my thoughts on.
We'll get there. We have a whole section about it.
Yeah, especially with Adam Driver's points. I was like, I know we're going to get into this. But no,
Yeah.
Anton, you make up a really good point. It is really, what is this story about, if it's even a story? For every direction this movie goes in, the question I always found myself asking when I watched it was, so what? Or where is this really going? Is Enzo reckoning with his personal life? Is it about saving the company and building Ferrari into what it is? Is it about the awful situation that happens in the Mille Miglia this year, causing racing to be changed forever and the race itself to never happen again? The question of what's it about, which I know is a very banal question to ask and very basic, but that is where I think a lot of my frustration.
The answer to your
lies
question
with.
is yes.
Yes.
So it's clearly trying to tell nuance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do want to highlight this one last time. The trailer that I saw had a lot of racing in it. So if you go into this movie and you're expecting this is going to be an awesome racing movie, the racing in this movie, while it is awesome, it's really well filmed, it's really well edited, it is sparse. I don't think the first race scene occurs until what, like 40 minutes into the film?
Yeah, it's late.
And the Mille Miglia, which we will get to, even that is intercut with some other scenes, which we can discuss in detail. But I was jokingly saying yes to your question, Garrett, because you were like, what is it about? Is it about this? Is it about that? Is it about this? It's like, I had the same questions. I don't know.
It's unfair to, let's say, compare it to a movie like Ford vs. Ferrari. It's contemporary in this regard too. Again, a movie that Mann was attached to and the actors themselves were both attached to too. But clearly that movie is trying to tell a story of how far they're willing to push the machines, and we're watching the machinery itself. We are focused, yes, on their personal lives, but let's be honest, it takes a backseat to the car porn of that film. Whereas this, while it does have beautiful car porn, it also has misery porn, scenery porn, and just horrible accents as well. So there's no singular focus. And even if you look at kind of all of these individual parts, the racing, the family drama, the coldness of of a CEO trying to keep his company afloat, none of them even works individually. They're all half-baked ideas at best when executed. Interesting, gorgeous to look at, but fulfilling, not so much.
You're so right. And like I agree with you. Like, is it fair to compare this to Ford versus Ferrari? Probably not. We're gonna do it anyway. That film, Mangold and the producers and everyone involved, they knew where their bread was buttered. Think about that. you had a really, really good idea of what kind of a race it was. Where is the race? How long is the race? Who's involved in the race? What is the meaning of the race? The 24 hours of Le Mans, right? They go into a lot of detail about the context of the race, and they show you a lot of details about the race. Here, the Mille Miglia, it's like, unless you're familiar with racing, it's like, okay, what is the significance of this race?
Mm-hmm.
How long is it? Who's involved? Like, you don't have a lot of the context for that.
One other point I do want to bring up too is in Ford versus Ferrari, again, as we say, we shouldn't compare it, but we are. We actually do see the development of Ford cars versus Ferrari cars and watch how each company builds and innovates and almost tries to subterfuge the competition. Maserati, for lack of better terms, is the villain of this movie. And we see some cool Maseratis.
Lip service.
Yes, exactly. And we see it in the final race as well. But we don't really see kind of the rivalry or why Enzo despises them so much or is reluctant to enter into a partnership with them. In short, they kind of just show up. Like, it just happens.
There is so much fascinating context that they could have gone into with this film and the story that they wanted to tell, right? Like, so in this film, we actually see who wins the Mille Miglia, right? It's this driver named Piero Taruffi.
It's
drives
pronounced McDreamy.
the driver for Ferrari. He's played by the dreamy Patrick Dempsey. I looked into him a little bit because me being the curious individual that I am, I'm like, well, what's the context of him winning the race, right? Okay, so this guy, he won this 1,000-mile race. He averaged more than 94 miles an hour for 10 and a half hours. Didn't use a navigator, which they mention in the film, right? Because he knows this race. He's raced it a bunch of times. And Ferrari even tells him, like, okay, fine, I'll give you my best car, but you can't use a navigator. He is driving a car that doesn't have any power steering. That is absolutely nuts. And that alone would make its own interesting movie. Mm-hmm. But the details of which Taruffi wins this race, you would know nothing about from seeing this movie, because right in the middle of the race, we get Michael Mann made the decision to show us Enzo Ferrari checking into a hotel, drinking espresso, lying on a bed. His wife, played by Penelope Cruz, who we'll talk about, goes grocery shopping and has a argument with his Yoda-like mother. I'm never going to tell Michael Mann how to make a movie, but it's like, is this supposed to be exciting? Because it's not.
I don't, one, it's not. And I feel like it's a very conscious decision to show such a dichotomy. And I feel like it's a bit of a peeling away, as they say, of the character and looking at the mundanity of it all. Because you have here a figure that has created, arguably the most famous, formula car of all time. And instead of putting them up to a pedestal, it is, again, a stripping down and showing the complex nuances and just follies of such a character. And even showing, look at them going through their everyday despite kind of the genius of what they've created. So if we want a story about kind of these very interesting like characters like Piero Taruffi, that's a very different kind of film.
But you agree with me, right?
Like, that would be an exciting film?
Yeah.
Of course, but that's not the film that was trying to be made here.
No, but we have, and it's not even just Taruffi. It's the rivalry with Maserati that you were mentioning, Garrett. It's like that also could have been very interesting. It's paid lip service here. All of a sudden, they're in the film and then they're knocked out of the race, and you're like, well, what happened with that? It's not important here. There's none of that. They really emphasize the soap opera, family drama, marital problem stuff. The banker has more lines than Taruffi. If that is not an indictment of this film, I don't know what is. It would be like if all three of us were watching The Insider and Wings Hauser had more lines than Philip Baker Hall.
Hey, man, he was cutting a check that could have spelled the end for Ferrari. That guy is integral to a plot point.
Who would know?
I actually do want to go back to one of Anton's point too. I do agree with what you're saying too. Like, we're examining Adam Driver and trying to either empathize, find the pathos in the character too. And especially in biopics or just movies where it is really a character study, which personally I think this movie is, you always need to ask yourself, can I relate to this character? Does this character experience any growth? Does he dig himself into a deeper hole? What do we actually learn about the character at the end of this movie compared to the beginning of this movie? He is still cold. He still is not empathetic. He is still singularly driven to his purpose, but his approach isn't changed by the events that have happened in this summer, as far as we can see, shown to us in the movie. So again, all of this examination of the character amounts to, so what? What's the lesson learned? What's the
Nothing.
thesis that the audience is to take away?
I learned
And
nothing about him.
I
I
learned
know
nothing about him that I didn't know at the end of the movie that I knew
Yeah.
at the beginning of the movie.
I didn't learn anything about why he was such a genius businessman, which he apparently wasn't. I learned nothing about what made him such an innovative racing engineer. I learned nothing about him as a race car driver. I learned nothing about him as just a car company owner. I learned nothing about him as a father or a husband, except that he was unfaithful to his wife. I learned that.
Just, all you get are the flaws, but no story around those flaws.
If location sharing existed in 1957, Ferrari would have been this movie would have been 3 minutes long, honestly. He did not do a great job of hiding.
No.
Lena Lardy and his child from Penelope Cruz.
What do we think about the cross-cutting to the bank stuff?
Boring?
Boring.
What about
It's
the
boring.
racing scenes?
The racing scenes are some of the most
Best
gorgeous
parts.
scenes I've ever seen
Best
filmed.
part.
It's genuinely engrossing racing. And whoever shot this film, I hope they're shooting that new F1 movie directed by
Messerschmitt.
Is it Messerschmitt? Is he shooting that F1 movie with Brad Pitt?
I don't know, but I mean, he could.
Honestly, he could. Now I need to look it up too.
The $350 million F1 movie?
It is Claudio Miranda, who also is Fincher's guy too. So at the very least, we are getting the David Fincher family tree of cinematographers for racing movies. So we'll
very experienced DP. I believe he shot Tron Legacy.
Yes, he is Joseph Kosinski's guy who is directing F1 too.
Yeah.
I see this as I was just going to say, I think this is just a very ambitious take at trying to tell a character piece. I like the way you said it, Garrett, but at the end of the day, it's just very much a not everyone's flavor way of telling a story. I think it's a very particular kind of, I'm going to tell my story the way I want to approach. And that's with not only are we kind of at the extreme end of films that don't do any spoon feeding? We've talked about that a lot, is where sometimes you get too much exposition, and that we really do like it when films allow for a bit of just trust in the viewer to be able to connect the dots. There are not a ton of dots to connect here.
The more conventional way a story like this is told, and I'm seriously drawing a blank on a movie that does this right now, and I'm sure in 5 minutes I will yell a random movie out, so I am just prefacing that now. But the more kind of conventional way, I would say movies like this are done is a man, a woman, a character, whomever, is getting ready to go to a seminal moment, events, presentation in their life. Jobs is a great example of this. There it is.
Walk the Line.
Exactly. Now I'm thinking of Walk Hard, which another slight digression, because this movie and Walk Hard have one thing in common, in that the wrong son died is said multiple times by a character. Anywho, but I want to get back to this point because I have many more digressions, and I'm not digressing a digression.
Oppenheimer.
Too. Again, it is told through a series of flashbacks so we can understand the character that have really shaped them to these circumstances in the moment too, so we can have an appreciation for where they are and the event that's unfolding too.
Gran Turismo
too. But again,
no joke, Gran Turismo.
No, you're right. But you're right. This movie, scenes happen and it takes, to use a racing term, we're taking turns around a corner, but we're not even sure if we're still on track. And even still, if we are on track, where's the actual finish line? There's no answer to that too. So thank you, listeners, for listening to my digressions on digressions. But again, I do think I give credit to this movie for trying to tell that story in a non-conventional way, but it just amounts to a collection of scenes, less a story.
The racing scenes, I agree with you both. They're very exciting. There is one problem I have with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cardinal sin for action scenes. I know it's historically accurate. The Ferrari and Maserati cars are the same color.
I know what you're saying.
You're saying all cars look the same, huh?
They literally look the same. They're all the same design.
I
understand it's historically accurate, and it was colored by nationality. The Italian cars were red, the French ones were blue, the German ones were white, the British ones were dark green. But I was surprised by this because I could see this being a real come to Jesus challenge moment for man, because he is someone who excels at set piece action. He is also someone who excels at accuracy. And he went the way of accuracy. And it reminds me of that old Spielberg anecdote. A production designer asked him which cars he wanted for a car chase in one of his films, and Spielberg said, "I don't care as long as they're different colors." It's like,
You're right. What Michael Mann takes liberties in is not what a conventional director would take liberties in, to
right.
exactly your point.
He took liberties in this film with the context of the story. He assumed that everyone was just familiar with all of the stuff that already happened. Like I said, if you want to go back to the Ford v Ferrari comparison, if we're doing a Ford v Ferrari versus Ferrari, there's a mouthful for you. The former does a very good job of establishing what the 24-hour of Le Mans is and means. This film, the plot, a good deal of it revolves around the Mille Miglia, and it doesn't really explain what that is. It just kind of keeps mentioning it, like, to keep your company, you need to win the Mille Miglia. Okay, goodbye.
You bring up a really great point. You feel how long Le Mans is in Ford versus Ferrari. This just feels like a few laps around to track.
Right. You're like, how long is it?
I'm
How many laps?
oversimplifying and
Who would know?
over-exaggerating, I know. But yes, you don't know the logistics as well as you do in Ford versus Ferrari. Not even close by comparison.
Should we talk about the crash?
Let's talk about my
Let's
favorite
talk about
scene.
it.
Let's
Okay.
talk about a scene that had my wife yelling, "Oh my God," very
Oh
loudly.
my God. They're
Our
eating
whole
her.
theater like screamed out, I remember, during that scene.
It's shocking. I found it very effective. I was not prepared for it.
I appreciate it because the movie does do a good job of Chekhov's gunning, saying like, oh, the only danger on this racetrack are things like kids and pets, even though that is not what causes the accident. It's who the collateral damage is. But they really do not undersell how dangerous racing is. And Michael Mann, bless his heart, makes sure to show how visceral and awful, something as awful and visceral like this crash was. And unfortunately does it too effectively well.
Yeah, I was surprised by how graphic it was. I up until that point, I was like, how is this going to get an R rating?
And they earn that R rating in
Yeah.
around 5 seconds.
I don't know how many car crashes I've seen in movies through my life, right? It's probably thousands. I've never seen anything quite like this.
I can't think of any car crash scenes in films that were this visceral, this
Yeah.
in your face.
I
Like
totally
nothing like this in Cars.
maybe Cars too.
Yeah.
But no, you're definitely right though. And I understand the shocking nature of it. Like it's meant to be something out of left field of how something like racing is such a dangerous sport and can really change on a dime. And again, it's not really explored kind of the aftermath of what happens due to this crash in the racing world and kind of around Italy in general. But it is effective in how abhorrent, for lack of better words, the situation was, because it really was awful. And they really don't skip on the details. It's Michael Mann. He is saying, this crash was this bad. I'm going to make it look this bad, which we see with a man literally bisected and his intestines dragged across concrete. I can't even say this without like laughing or sounding astounded. I'm realizing.
It's crazy. I mean, it is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in a movie. And I have to give Mann credit for that because, yeah, there's some wonky CGI, but
Do you guys think it's effective storytelling when you think of the context of the rest of the film?
no.
No, it just doesn't work in the
It just
context of the film.
I think like it's a very like, visually beautiful horror. Like it's like, how do you capture something so well in the film but kind of have it not really represent anything in the film?
It succeeds in its shock value, but your question, Anton, I mean, I'm curious to hear your answer to your own question, but I think you'll agree with both of us. It's like, does it fit in with the rest of the story that the film is telling? I don't think so.
No, I see it fitting in a better film.
If the film had been about that race, you know what else this film doesn't mention? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert on Italian racing history. That crash ended Mia Miglia.
That is true.
They never had it again because of that crash. This film doesn't mention that at all.
No, I think like, and that's why it just feels so disappointing in that you can really take something like that, have it be so pivotal and trying to let you know more about Enzo Ferrari, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. And otherwise, you have to just kind of draw and just think like, what could it mean? Is it about hubris? Is it about being able to create something that's so destructive? No, I feel like that's just all just a stretch.
Well, we talked about it before, but again, when he comes to the scene of the crash, he's more concerned with the state of the car instead of his driver, who was literally, I will say it again, split in half with his intestines on the ground.
Yeah, I think one of the most shocking things that I was not expecting for in a movie since About Schmidt.
I don't think those two movies have ever been said in the same sentence.
All I'm saying, dude, I did not expect to see Kathy Bates nude. It was not what I expected.
Are you saying that's the equivalent of Deportago's body?
Yeah,
Because
just
you are about to be put into a misery situation.
exactly.
Sorry, Your Highness. When he goes to inspect the scene of the crash, did either of you recognize the music playing in the soundtrack?
Can't say I did.
No.
Michael Mann borrowing from himself. It was used in The Insider.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun too. Huh.
But also just kind of curious.
Yeah,
Don't
why?
know why.
Yeah.
I found it distracting, but I'm also a film soundtrack nerd, so I would notice that.
That is actually so cool. But yeah, no, did not pick up on that. But hey, we love man, and man loves man.
Man loves man.
And man loves the
love man.
And
prison
look, I
of
to the
man.
listeners, I know we're being hard on this movie, but like we really do like Michael Mann.
We love Michael
Yeah,
Mann. We're passionate.
You know what? This might come because we covered The Insider so recently, but like I just the dialogue in this film is so unmemorable. Like God, like the dialogue in The Insider was so good, and this film they keep repeating stuff like these will bankrupt us. My son died. My brother died 25 years ago.
And that's what makes it even more frustrating because I know we're going to get into the acting of this. Penelope Cruz, in my opinion, lights up every scene that she's in. Like, honestly, this movie was just like an Oscar reel for her. I honestly thought she was one of the best actresses that year. But digression aside,
Should have been nominated.
should have been nominated. But you're right. Some of the scenes are just so stilted, and she is just coming in with so much energy, so much passion, and just she's getting hit back with such a detached, unempathetic, I should say apathetic husband, well, who is cheating on her. And she is just kind of acting against a wall almost. Like she is not getting back what she is giving in terms of energy in this movie. It almost feels like she's in a different movie with her energy here.
I have a quote from Michael Mann that he gave to A-Frame in an interview, and I'm going to ask this question to you both. Should I read it in the George Lucas voice?
Yes, please.
Sure you can.
Okay. This is Michael Mann, and he was speaking about the reason for a contrast of visual style within the film. First of all, they didn't film it on the planet Hoth. Quote, I wanted to shoot two different kinds of movies in the sense I wanted the mise-en-scène of the family drama in the film, which is the heart of it and what audiences end up engaging with so strongly, to involve a kind of Renaissance-like Caravaggio-inspired lighting and be monochromatic in terms of tone-on-tone interiors. There's a stasis or static quality to those scenes, so that the human face and the expression of the dialogue is what's dominant. The racing scenes, which resolve some of the dramatic issues of the film, I wanted to be very expressionistic, with the slashes of violent red cars speeding through everything. I also wanted to take the audience and, in effect, put them in the driver's seat, so that they're feeling the agitation of the race, and opposed to externally observing it with beautiful long lens shots of cars and hills. I wanted to subjectify the experience of racing in the film and make it as agitated and savage as possible. That was the design of it. End quote.
Oh my god. What?
Boring.
Can I just highlight one thing? He said, I wanted the mise-en-scène of the family drama in the film, which is the heart of it and what audiences end up engaging with so strongly. No one who went to see this movie was engaged with that at all.
But this goes back to the point that I was saying before. It's clearly what he's focused on,
Yes,
but this
yes.
is a half-baked dish in the oven.
This is Michael Mann. The studio or any of the 11, 12, 25 studios involved with the making of this film, they were probably like, yes, Michael Mann's making this. We're going to get some kick-ass racing scenes. And then he is like, the family drama in the film, which is, I wanted to involve a kind of Renaissance-like Caravaggio-inspired lighting. Holy crap.
I would love to see, this is actually This is a great what if. I would love to see Ridley Scott, Michael Mann, and James Mangold each direct each other's movies of House of Gucci, Ford vs. Ferrari, and Ferrari. And I would like to see all of their movies in that regard. Because I feel like Michael Mann wanted to make House of Gucci. I have lots of thoughts here.
I would rather see Michael Mann's House of Gucci than Ridley Scott's. I agree with you.
That's what I'm saying. And I would rather see Ridley Scott's Ferrari, I think, over Michael Mann's Ferrari. James Mangold can keep Ford versus Ferrari.
I was going to say that I really like Ford vs. Ferrari.
I really do.
It's
James
just a
Mangold
really
is the
good
king
film.
of dad movies. When it all is said and done, we will look back on his career as the king of dad film.
What is it? Logan. Ah, great.
Logan Lucky? Oh,
Yep.
Logan. Oh,
Logan.
sorry. Yeah.
Logan.
Logan. Oh, Logan's
Copland?
okay. Copland's great dad movie. Night and Day, good for the dads and the moms.
He did the Wolverine too, right?
Yeah.
That movie's fine. Third
It's
act
okay.
aside.
He did the fifth Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
Wait, what else did he do? He did better movies, right?
Night and Day
Eh.
with Cameron Diaz and Tom Cruise. Walk the Line, he did.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
We like
Okay.
it. Great dad movie. Again, dad movie extraordinaire. Oh,
He's a good
Girl
director.
Interrupted. He did Girl Interrupted.
Okay. He's a good director.
Guy makes good films.
This quote from Mann,
Yeah.
it explains him so perfectly. He thought audiences would like the family drama.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell Mann how to make a movie, but man, that's, I would say, misguided.
Well, it clearly wasn't studio interference that stopped him from trying to tell the movie the way he wanted.
Doesn't this film feel like an incomplete, almost like rough cut of a movie where you're like, hey, Michael, like this looks cool, but like, where's the rest?
It feels like we had the climax of a better film added or in it, and then the rest of what it would be a traditional biopic is somewhere else.
It's too many movies in one, and nothing is committed to. This, I think, the thesis statement that we were all agreeing on.
Who am I supposed to sympathize with? Him, his
Penelope
wife,
Cruz.
his
Penelope
mistress.
Cruz.
She's the only character. Yeah, because she's the one that's more jilted and
Well, she also pulls a gun on him and shoots the wall.
Also, they try to make Penelope Cruz look haggard. She is so beautiful.
Beautiful lady.
Yes, we'll say that.
Yeah.
What about Shailene Woodley?
Shailene Woodley?
I really thought she was Irish when I was watching this movie. Her accent. We'll talk about her accent.
We'll get to the cast soon.
It's just riveting stuff. You know, just watching Laura. Laura's his wife, right? Just watching her check into a bank in the middle of the race. It's just riveting stuff.
Riveting stuff. Riveting.
No, it's a weird intercut. I can see it from like the storytelling perspective. You have a point you want to make either about how at the end of the day Ferrari is someone's hero, but for what his accomplishments are, he's a flawed character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the way that they shot any of this, any of the intercut of the cool racing with going to the grocery store, I don't think that's a very effective way to either tell that point, even if that was the point that we're trying to draw out of it.
No. Look,
I agree with all of that.
We were hammering on this earlier. It sort of tries to build up a rivalry with Maserati. That doesn't go anywhere because the cars crash out early and then it's over. And then there's the trophy presentation with Patrick Dempsey's character, and you're like, oh, cool, this guy won, and Ferrari's not even there. And then the film just ends. There's no payoff. There's some kind of vague, looming financial threat to his business, and they were building most of the plot, it seemed like, around that early on, but they leave that unresolved apart from text at the end of the film. Also, here's the big thing too, and I knew the context of this when I first saw the movie. I was familiar with Gianni Agnelli. He was the CEO of Fiat. Also, his family still owns the football club Juventus. He offered Ferrari a lifeline over the phone, which they show in the film. If you are familiar with the Agnelli name, you will know what happens. But I feel like most people, if you're watching this movie, you're not familiar with the name, right? So if you know the context and the history of Ferrari, you know that Ferrari gets bought by Fiat, but it's not well explained in this movie. They never say Agnelli's name on screen, or at least it might be in the classic Michael Mann dialogue where it's mumbled. But if you don't know any of this stuff, Anton, do you have any idea what's going on with these characters?
No, and it's just not effective storytelling.
Not at all. I was muted, and that's what I was trying to say multiple times over and over.
And also, I don't like Juventus, so we have that.
So it's not only like an unconventional biopic, it's also just like very unconventional storytelling. And that's where it kind of dips a bit more into art house. So to say that this is a passion project is totally true. This is what you get when you have a director that really does just kind of have free reign, but at the same time, a passion project that seems unrealized. Or at least I hope that this isn't exactly what he wanted.
Napoleon makes this look like a masterpiece, though.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to cover Black Hat.
I love
Just
Black
sidebar.
Hat.
Ooh.
Kind of love it.
It's a bad movie.
I had fun with it. I need to rewatch it though. It's been many years.
We could do a whole hour on Chris Hemsworth Pittsburgh accent. Anyway, I have an observation. I want to hear both of your opinions on this. With the exception of Last of the Mohicans, I don't think I want Michael Mann doing period pieces.
I don't mind it. We already referenced this earlier. I like Ali a lot more than you do, Pat. I know you hate that film.
I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like D-.
I'm indifferent.
D-. Will Smith, never been in a great movie.
Yep. Jamie Foxx, I really liked his character.
Yeah. Public Enemies.
That's all right.
I like when Michael Mann, to me, excels at contemporary and modern. I don't like it when he goes back in time, except for Last of the Mohicans.
I was going to say Last of the Mohicans, though. I think that really great story, also all-star cast. So
a very atypical Michael Mann film.
In that seems like blockbuster bait.
Yeah,
which is not a typical Mann film.
No. That was a very, very long reason we just did. We just did it in almost an hour on this. Next reason, Adam Driver in the cast. I think he's a good actor. He is not a star.
I have to disagree. I think he's a star.
Oh, really?
No,
can you name, other than Star Wars, can you name me the box office hits he's been in? Because there aren't any.
I mean, okay, Black Klansman,
nope.
Marriage Story.
Nope.
Let's go The Last Duel.
Bomb. Huge bomb.
I mean,
he's not a star.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to
let me amend my statement.
Star.
He is more Daniel Day-Lewis than Harrison Ford. He is an actor. He is not a movie star.
You know what it is? Yeah. He has just such a presence. I mean, the guy's 6'4" and built like a truck and just has a head. That's just all I will say is he has a head that is very unique. But you're definitely right. Like, he is way more of a character actor who is always the star of his films.
Anton, I saw you react to me saying this. All I'm saying, let me build on what I'm saying, because I can see you got mad.
I love.
He's not a box office guy, though.
Okay, may I, as the third party, say this?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a box office star, but I think he makes every project that he stars in more interesting than if he were not in it.
Yeah, I can agree with that statement.
He's a draw to make me watch a movie. If I see Adam Driver's in a movie, I want to watch it more.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at his filmography and if we want to include the criteria for movie star being like box office draw, we can probably look at, there's probably a list out there of like some historical actors that haven't really had box office hits that still end up being strong actors. Now, I don't necessarily have that list on hand. I do feel compelled to pull that list out.
We have to now.
Yeah, we have to. But I do think that I'm just going to argue that Adam Driver is like the movie star.
Wait, so you're telling me every year you're like, man, I can't wait to watch the next movie Adam Driver's in.
It's not so much I can't wait for the movie. I'm just saying when I see his name attached to a film, it gives that film more merit.
Yeah. Is Adam Driver compelling as an actor? Yes.
So you were big on, I'm just going to run through this.
The Man Who Killed Don Quixote.
Logan Lucky, seeing a poster directed by Steven Soderbergh starring Adam Driver, Daniel Craig, and Channing Tatum. I'm like, yes, sold. I don't care what your movie's about. Sold on that.
So you were like White Noise and 65. Hell yeah, I'm in.
Honestly, White Noise, yes, I very much was excited for it because I did like the book. And I'm like, Noah Baumbach, Greta Gerwig, Adam Driver.
I can't explain 65. That was just
that
was
65 should have been the best movie ever, and the fact that it's so bad and boring.
It made less than.
Was his Marion Cotillard film by.
Oh no! It
was a very French film. Let's just
it beat It beat the budget. It made like 60 million, whereas the budget was 45 million.
Oh man,
Lincoln. He was Samuel Beckwith in that.
we can't count the Lincoln.
Inside Llewyn Davis, he has one of the best scenes in that film. While We're Young is a great lesser Noah Baumbach from 2014. Midnight Special.
Look, you can look at this list and even
We can play this game all day.
I would say minus 65. Minus 65, a lot of these are just very particular films. It doesn't look like he takes on big blockbuster movies other than being in the Star Wars films. And when I kind of look at that as a bit more of a just kind of something more to applaud that he takes more interesting roles in general.
Right. I don't think he is a very by the numbers actor.
He
is
needs
a
an
very
agent.
interesting
That's what he
actor.
needs.
He needs a better agent. Yeah, especially for at least his blockbusters. That's not wrong.
Although I have
Yeah.
a zag for you both. Can I tell you my favorite Adam Driver performance?
SNL?
Nope. I guarantee you will not guess it looking at this list.
Patterson by Jim Jarmusch when he's a
Nope.
bus driver.
Any more guesses?
Nah.
Go ahead.
Silence.
Oh, okay. That's a very interesting choice.
This is probably a super hot take. That is one of my favorite Scorsese movies.
Definitely a lesser Scorsese in terms of its appreciation, but
I
it
know.
is. That's a tough hang. It's a good movie, but that's a tough hang.
It's not an easy watch, but I came away from that movie. I was like, I've never seen anything like this.
I mean, it's also set in in a superior country, Japan. So
That's what I mean. Anton, you and I have talked about this. Like Scorsese does a lot of movies that are similar, and like this was a very different one for him. And I really liked it.
Yeah. No, that was such a fun movie. Very underrated.
Yeah, it definitely an underrated movie. I think we have to cover it.
Yep.
Also, my second favorite Driver performance, The Last Duel.
I definitely listed that one.
You
Him
did.
and Logan Lucky.
I just wanted to
some
make
of
you
the
mad,
best
Anton,
comedic.
because I know how you feel about him.
Him and Logan Lucky, though, is a fantastic
I wish he
comedic
picked better
performance.
movies. He's in a lot of just like 65. What the hell is that?
A movie made by the guys who co-wrote and created A Quiet Place, and that's how movies get greenlit these days.
Like if he was friends with me and he was like, Pat, I think about doing this like dinosaur movie, I'd be like, yeah, don't do that, man.
I guess I just have a lot of respect for Adam Driver too. I don't think a lot of people just know very unconventional career. Like was not really born into acting, but went into the military, was a Marine, medically discharged as a lance corporal. So like he served and then goes to Juilliard. Okay. And like
Have you
then
ever
he's
seen
rejected from Juilliard before he
Have you
joined the
ever seen
Marines.
his photo from when he was in the Marines? His ears look like
Yeah.
Dumbos,
Just-
and he looks like
just
he's about to
again,
take off.
and
I'll
the
say it
dudes
again.
in-
I've talked about Adam Driver's head, but that man's got some Dumbo ears, and I'm glad that he grew into that head because I know how tough that can be as a fellow
Yeah.
big-headed man.
I guess I also just appreciate the roles that he does take. It's kind of all over the spectrum. He plays basically a man-child in Girls, but then he's kind of going all over the spectrum with a lot of his films, whether you look at The Last Duel, Black Klansman, this film, Silence. He takes very, very interesting roles. And like to me, that's still puts him in the category of movie star in that he's competing in films that maybe aren't very unconventional, but I do think critically known.
Hot take that's not a hot take. Kylo Ren is easily the best character in the new trilogy.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. Anyhow, could we talk about Shailene Woodley, though?
Can we? Well,
Sure.
I think first we need to talk about him in Ferrari because we haven't yet.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
He plays the main character. Do we like him as Enzo Ferrari?
I think it was fine.
Yeah,
I don't
It's
think he was
whatever.
horrible. but
solid.
He's just too stoic for his own good. Like nothing seems to phase him. If that
What was
makes
the
sense.
assignment? What do you guys think the assignment was?
Well, I'm basing this on an interview I saw with Michael Mann where he mentioned how Enzo Ferrari was rejected from a job at Fiat and Adam Driver was rejected from Juilliard initially, and he saw a connection between the two, and he saw Adam Driver in Ferrari or vice versa. I don't know, Anton, because here's the problem for me judging this performance. Number one, he's playing a character who's 30 years older than himself. Number two, I have never seen a audio/video recording of Enzo Ferrari. So I have no idea what the actual guy was like. I thought his performance, like, he's good in the drama scenes with Penelope Cruz, so I appreciated those scenes, but my answer to you is, like, I don't know.
And I think like that's why I can't even grade his performance well, because it's without lack of the context of this, what lesson I'm supposed to learn, that I feel like this cold, very detached performance almost feels like it's in a void. And if we don't have anything to stand against of what lesson are we supposed to learn, and Garrett, you said it best, then I feel like it's just kind of a lack. It's more of a lack of story to kind of put this performance into proper context.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say to that point too, we can attribute his kind of muted or stoic performance as kind of just being apathetic or detached from things going on outside of his quest to make Ferrari the premier formula racing car company in the world. But again, his performance is just so muted throughout the entire film. You don't feel that passion, you don't feel that energy, you don't
Mm-mm.
necessarily feel that drive.
I think the best scene that he was in, he's at lunch with his drivers and he's giving them like a monologue about driving and like
Yeah,
you're up
that's a
against yeah, you know what I'm gonna say. Like you're up against this guy and he's braking and you're braking and
yeah, the two
yeah,
you observe the corner. Yeah, it's a cool scene.
it is. It is. Like he's good. But like we said, it's like I don't know what the real Ferrari was like. But that's okay though, right? Like a totally different biopic, but like Russell Crowe as John Nash in A Beautiful Mind. I have no idea what John Nash was like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that Russell Crowe gave an awesome performance. So maybe I'm holding Driver to a little bit of an unfair comparison in that regards.
Yeah. Do I know what Oppenheimer actually was like
No.
in his interviews in real life? No.
Or
But
Napoleon.
or Napoleon.
I know one thing, he didn't sound like Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, it's again, even when you look at all those films, you have a much better context of what goes on because you know what kind of story is being told, and that's not clear here.
Penelope Cruz is the standout.
Yeah.
She rules.
She's
She is acting
incredible.
circles around people in this movie.
I said it before, Garrett. She should have been nominated for this, and it's a problem.
It is a problem. I honestly think the audience's reception, the box office reception, really how quickly people moved on from this movie just hurt her chances. But in all honesty, like if I was putting an acting reel of Penelope Cruz together, this is right up there as some of the focal points.
But the problem for me is her performance is too good. She is overshadowing her husband in this film, and the film is allegedly supposed to be about him.
You're not wrong.
Is the movie Ferrari about Laura?
Is that just kind of the imbalance of the character that we're supposed to root for is his wife, and so the way that she's portrayed is just more emotional. You definitely see his flaws as more upfront and not someone who you want to root for, and then that kind of creates an imbalance in even the on-screen chemistry.
I think so.
I think we're having like circular arguments with ourselves, like trying to find deeper meaning than what was presented to us, the viewer. Which, again, this is what criticism is all about. But we're trying to answer unanswerable questions, if that almost makes sense.
No, that's fair.
I don't think there is an answer to it. To both your points,
it's a great
like
question.
is she supposed to be the most interesting character in the film that we sympathize with? It's like maybe, but should she be? I would say no. Because the film is ostensibly based on the biography of Enzo Ferrari.
It is also interesting. It's like, yes, clearly they are estranged from each other, and she is a business partner who technically owns 50% of the company. So she, as much as she is way more emotional and unforgiving of Enzo's actions, whether it be a mistress or mismanagement of the company overall, she does have a vested interest of this all. So she, quote unquote, cares a lot more because she is almost a non-active participant in her life in this regard. Her son dies, her husband is cheating on her and has another kid with her that is basically replacing her son. And she is technically in charge of a company that she has no say in how they work or how they progress in their pursuits too. So you can understand why this character is maybe more emotional and we feel more of that pathos towards her. But again, it just doesn't feel like she is in the same movie as any of these other characters.
But she knows how to work a bank.
Honestly, she should manage my finances.
Second most interesting bank scene in a Michael Mann film.
Nice.
All right, Shailene Woodley, just go.
not the least interesting Aaron Rodgers ex.
She dated Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, they almost got
Dude.
married.
Dude, they were almost engaged. As a
Yeah.
Jets fan who's completely miserable, I just want to move past Shailene Woodley as quickly as possible. She and Aaron Rodgers like ate clay together because she said it has some health benefits. And I don't know if eating clay messed up her vocal cords in that it doesn't allow her to do an accent. But my lord, her and Adam Driver, let's just say it, received fairly just criticism for their attempts at Italian accents. And honestly, my wife asked me in the movie, maybe around 40 to 50 minutes in, wait, she's supposed to be Italian verbatim. That it's one thing to have a bad accent or slip in and out, but it's one thing to question, wait, she's trying to do an Italian accent? That makes it that much worse.
Shailene Woodley's not a great at accents.
I don't know what's worse. I mean, what you just said, or I actually thought when I first saw the movie that she was Irish because her Italian attempt was so bad. I actually thought she was slipping back into her native accent, which I just assumed was Irish because her name was Shailene.
Her name
Right,
was
so right here.
Shailene.
Shailene Woodley. Schmerta Saoirse Ronan. But yeah, we're all talking about it right now. It's either she was slipping out of her accent, we didn't realize she was Italian, or we thought she was of a different ethnicity too. So that's 3 strikes. You're in accent jail now.
She's like, Enzo, what position did Deportago come in? First, second, or third?
I'm from the Simi Valley district of Ireland.
Yeah, I'm from where in Italy are you from? Simi Valley, yeah, exactly.
Anton, it's kind of like in Moonraker where they filmed the scenes set in Los Angeles in what was clearly not France.
Yeah, okay. Jokes aside, actually no, the performance was a joke, so we can kind of stick with it.
It's not great. She was
The
not up for
character's
award
interesting.
consideration.
Her son's interesting.
Is
Again,
he?
that plot line itself is somewhat interesting to me, but it is just so poorly acted, and I can't take anyone seriously with them both slipping in and out of their accents that it falls so flat.
She really hasn't been in anything that I've liked. So
I don't know anything about her.
She
I don't
eats
want to
clay.
rag on her
She
too
eats
much.
clay. No, she eats clay. She eats clay.
ayahuasca.
Yeah.
What does that
She-
mean? What are you talking about?
She's
She-
into the whole, like, how do you call
She's
it?
an
It's like
naturopath.
holistic living,
Yes.
as they say.
Big into homeopathy.
Do you know those people that you used to go to like college and high school with that are into those?
Yeah, she worked in the co-op at your college, and
Yeah.
she loves incense.
And then they
Oh.
tried.
Is
Yeah.
she like Kyrie Irving showing up to a pickup game burning sage?
Kinda.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, she's homeopathic. I'm like,
I
hey,
like her
I'm
less
sick.
now.
I should take some Dayquil. And she's like, no, you should crush up some sage thyme in a mortar and pestle, burn it while giving glory to some shaman, and eat clay.
She's huge environmental activist.
Which,
Like,
great. We appreciate that. We
Yep,
love that.
yep. But then it
Oh,
also
a
falls
Hollywood
into-
actress being into the environment.
All right. So I think we can all agree that we did not like Shailene Woodley in this film. And she has some.
Yeah, she was
Maybe
not nominated
questionable
for
life.
Best Supporting Actress.
No.
No shocker.
But she was Mary Jane Watson in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 in a deleted scene.
Right.
In a deleted scene.
Patrick Dempsey, who plays Tarufi. I thought it was crazy to see him in the film at first until I read it actually is great casting. He's the owner of Dempsey Racing. He's a real race car driver. He's competed in the IndyCar series, or he's competed in the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. He has competed in the Le Mans race, the 24-hour of Le Mans. He's a real legit race car driver. He apparently does acting on the side to support his racing stuff. Pretty cool that he's in this movie after reading that, I have to say. Like,
he's also just in general not the worst accent, right? So
no.
yeah, so
he does a great job. Honestly, the supporting cast,
Yes.
Sarah Gadone, Patrick Dempsey, Jack O'Connell,
Yeah.
all great.
They're okay. I thought Dempsey had some of the best, most memorable dialogue in the film, though, where he mentioned that the car doesn't have a ashtray.
yeah, that was funny.
That's one of the few parts I remember because I laughed.
And I think, is that just more Patrick Dempsey's natural charisma shining through?
Well, yes, that is the scene that reminded me the most of a film that we already talked about, The Insider.
Yeah, even The Insider, though, there's much more done with the different character actors and supporting actors across the film. It's a kind of a wider cast, but here I don't think that it's really not a big cast.
It's
So
limited.
yeah, it's really limited. So you make a really good point. This is one of those few moments where it does kind of feel like that.
Like, think about it. In the courtroom scene in The Insider, he just lets Bruce McGill cook for like 3 minutes straight. There's no scene like that in this movie.
And you know what's very interesting too? This movie has so many long stretches of silence,
Yeah.
people acting pensive too. But again, like you just feel nothing in those scenes, except for maybe Penelope Cruz and like kind of the pity you feel for her character and kind of the trials and tribulations that she is going through.
You're right. The other actors, Garrett, I have to disagree. I thought the supporting cast was really underdeveloped. I don't
I
know
think
who
they're
is
fine.
who. I don't know who his like lead mechanic was. They don't have names. You don't know who's who. You're like, who are you?
You know what? I can't really watch Adam Driver being stoic, Shailene Woodley not know how to be Italian,
Shailene.
and any scene Penelope Cruz isn't a scene I want to be a part of outside of the racing. So it's like a nice welcome reprieve from, for lack of better words, pretty boring content. And I hate to say that because I sound like an ADD riddled person, which I am, but that's not in relation to how I watch movies.
It's okay.
Listeners
We
can
don't
tell
hold
what the
that against
digressions
you.
I do. But again, it's a nice reprieve, but it's just okay, it's fine. Great. All right. Can we go to the racing or Penelope Cruz instead of like Shailene Woodley? Thank you.
What about his mother, Yoda,
It's not
the witch?
Has
out
an
of place.
Italian mother ever been like presented nicely in a movie?
No.
No.
No. Yeah, I don't know. Good actress, I guess. She did a good job because you're like, whoa.
It was all right.
But I was gonna say, not something that made me enjoy the film.
No, and again, I'm going to compare this to The Insider. Think about all the characters that work with Pacino's character at CBS. They all have personalities,
Mhm.
and it's like, the scene here where Enzo complains to the mechanic that his wife found out about his bastard son. He's like, my wife knows everything. I have to do something about it. And the other guy's like, okay, boss. And you're like, who is this guy? What is his name? Are they friends? How long has he known him? You don't get any of that here.
Versus like when you actually go down the line and look at who was being portrayed, real life historical figures that were very important to the life of Enzo Ferrari.
Right. And there could have been a lot that we don't even know about. But again, the Insider comparison, Pacino's character, Lowell Bergman, you really get the feeling that he had been working with that team at CBS for years. They all had good chemistry. They all seemed like, years-long coworkers, right?
Mhm.
You don't get any of that here.
Again, feels like a collection of scenes.
Last reason why this wasn't better, the lack of marketing. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Neon spent a total of $7 million marketing this film. That's a joke. They clearly did not have a lot of faith in it.
No, and it's very much just Oscar bait, and even then trying to market for people to actually go into the theaters and watch. You look at the trailer, it's just a lot of racing.
Which is not really faithful to the film at all.
I am also looking up Neon's production history, which, by the way, great production studio and distributor. This is easily the most expensive movie that they have been a part of as well.
Not surprising, because they didn't know what to do with it.
I'm going through all their films right now. No movie has even come close in terms of like level of budget.
Imagine seeing this on Christmas Day.
I did.
I wonder if that was as awkward or more awkward than when I went on a first date with a girl in college and took her to go see J. Edgar.
On Christmas?
No, I think it was in November, so it was like kind of close to Thanksgiving. I was like,
Wait, hold on. The Clint Eastwood film with DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, Adam Driver's first film role, J. Edgar.
It was in J. Edgar.
That's why Anton went.
Time is a flat circle.
How'd that first date go?
We dated for like a year and a half.
Okay, pretty well.
Yeah.
She was so confused. Like, why did you take?
Yeah.
You know what was a great Christmas Day film? Les Miserables. I had so much fun.
On Christmas Day, you saw it?
Yeah, that was fun.
Whoa. Which one?
Wolverine one.
With Russell Crowe singing?
Yeah.
Nah, no, it was a way better one that year, or I think it was the year before. Django Unchained. Great Christmas Day film.
Ooh. Yeah.
That's a great theater movie.
Yes.
So I'm guessing Ferrari wasn't.
No.
No.
No, not at all. Also, sorry to interrupt this podcast, but I do actually have to leave in 10 minutes because I can't move my appointment.
We're about done.
Okay, I just wanted to be mindful of it. And
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to rush you
Just
guys.
in conclusion, this film was like pretty horribly marketed. It was. I mean, what did I say in the beginning? Like, I wanted to see this, and within like a week or two, it was just out of theaters. I was like, well, I guess that's that.
Yep.
It really is. It is very interesting because on paper, it is such a marketable film. The life of literally the most famous exotic sports car company and its founder with one of the most famous races in all of history. Coming off the heels again of Ford versus Ferrari a few years before that. When you hear this on paper, you're like, yes, that is a slam dunk. And then when they probably started seeing the dailies at those 12 production companies, they were like, oh, this is man's life is a prison, Michael Mann. Not racing is fun and dangerous, Michael Mann.
Well, we talked about the storytelling for an hour. We talked about Adam Driver and the rest of the cast. We talked about just how badly this film was marketed. I think we can wrap it up. Garret, as the guest, would you like to go first and give your rating?
Sure. So I feel like I've been very critical about this movie.
You have.
Yes. And I feel like I tend to be a very positive and upbeat person too. And I really do want to say, I remember enjoying the time I spent in theater watching this. And I've said it on the Insiders podcast too. But even a bad Michael Mann is still a good movie for me that I want to watch. So I understand my inherent biases and I can be a little bit more forgiving about it. That said, on the second rewatch of this, I really could not find anything to like outside of just the gorgeous set design, racing scenes, the cinematography, and just the attention to detail over there. But in all honesty, everyone feels like they're acting in a different movie. Adam Driver and Shailene Woodley's accents take me out of every scene that they're in. And when Penelope Cruz is not on screen or a car is not racing on the screen, I am always asking myself, where are either of those things? So in short, a great concept. Again, I can appreciate Michael Mann getting $110 million in his late 70s to fund and make this movie, but ultimately it's less than the sum of its parts, and I'm giving it a C-, bordering very closely to a D+.
All right. This could have and should have been a home run. It should have been thrilling, and instead it is a fizzle. It is so amazingly mediocre that it is almost bad, but it's not bad. Garret, I agree with you. Even a bad Michael Mann movie is still okay. Nothing about this film is outright bad. There's nothing in here that I hate. There's nothing in this film that I was like, ew, gross. The performances are good for the most part, but the story is boring. It's so boring. It's profoundly boring. I wanted to see racing. I didn't care about Enzo Ferrari's marital problems or his money problems or whatever the heck Michael Mann thought that I should care about. Maybe some people care about this when they go to see this movie. If so, more power to them. They may like this movie. I don't. The Mille Miglia was supposed to be this make it or break it point for Enzo Ferrari. Is this a racing film? Is this a biopic of Enzo Ferrari? I would argue it's neither. I don't know what this film is. Michael Mann picked the wrong lane, which is to say he didn't pick any lane. I don't know what race car he was driving. This is textbook mediocrity. Michael Mann has not made a great film in 20 years, and I say this very sadly because he really is one of my favorite filmmakers. I really wanted to like this film. Before I give my rating on this film, I want to give a rating about something that Michael Mann is involved in very recently, which is not a film. It is a show. It is called Tokyo Vice. It is on HBO. It is very good. Michael Mann co-produces it. He directed a couple episodes of it. Unfortunately, it has been canceled after only 2 seasons. If anyone hasn't seen it, I encourage them to do so because I really liked it. I liked the book that it was based on. It's definitely worth checking out. Back to my rating of Ferrari. Garret, I'm right there with you at a C-. It's not bad. It's just, it's so boring. There's just not a lot of excitement in it, and there should have been.
Yeah, this is just a very unconventional film. It does not tell a very compelling story. It does not have a character that you root for. It does not have a lesson that's supposed to be learned. This is less a film about the story of Enzo Ferrari than it is about trying to tell some kind of point that the audience is never going to understand. And as we found trying to talk about this film, you end up just kind of going in circles and your eyes go cross-eyed. So it's a very confusing film. and it wasn't a very enjoyable one. More than all that, it was just very boring. And I feel like despite the very beautiful scenes that we get with the racing, beautiful setting, it's just very hollow considering that I can't really take anything away from it that makes me better understand the character or even what kind of story and point is trying to be told. So I have to go with D+. It's just not much for me to enjoy here. And I think if there was a point, maybe I just didn't get it.
We all sound so disappointed.
We are.
It's a
Just
pretty disappointing
I know.
film.
Yeah.
Out of all the Man films that I've seen, I don't know when I'm going to watch this again. It's not going to be anytime soon.
No.
Yeah,
I have no desire to revisit this again.
I want to go watch Miami Vice.
I would happily watch Miami Vice. I'll watch Black Hat.
I would watch Black Hat before I watch this again.
Listeners, Pat's face, he looked like he kind of held back a little vomit saying that, being willing to admit that.
You know what? I did. It's look, Black Hat I think is a bad movie, but I think it's more interesting in some ways than Ferrari.
I agree with that.
Miami Vice I think is an awesome movie.
Miami Vice rules.
I love Miami Vice. I also don't think Miami Vice is great, but I think it's awesome.
It's fun.
It's a fun movie. Oh, you can't wait till we cover that, Garret.
And
I know you want to be on that episode too.
Honestly, I am your Michael Mann man.
I see this. Yes. Yeah.
I love nothing more than Mann being a prisoner of his own mind, which is Michael Mann's theme of every film he makes.
I already can see his pitch to the studio when he was going to make Miami Vice. He's like, look, I want to take the TV show. And you know how it was all like bright and colorful and fun? They were like, yeah. And he was just like, I'm going to make it boring.
He's like, did you like Collateral?
Do you like mumbled dialogue and digital cinematography? Well, I do.
They're like, okay, can we cast Colin Farrell? At least he's hot. He's like, yeah, sure, he's fine.
Michael Mann loves working with Jamie Foxx. Just thought about that.
He does.
I mean,
until
he
Miami
brought
Vice.
it out of Jamie Foxx in 04.
Jamie Foxx tapped out of that one.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx, cash that check.
We cashed that check.
He cashed that check.
Yeah, well, that is going to be it for Ferrari. Garret, as always, it's a pleasure. We are going to have you back very, very soon for our season 7 premiere. I don't know if you knew that.
I am waiting with bated breath to find out what I'm doing.
Well, we're going to end the recording and then I'll tell you what it is because we can't dare spoil anything for the listeners yet.
Cliffhangers.
Yes. But that is it for Ferrari. The next episode listeners will hear is Entrapment. That'll come out on New Year's Eve. Anything to add, Anton?
It's the new year. Just be good, people. Just be good.
Yeah.
And no matter what year you're listening to this.
Yeah. We're now neck deep in the mid-20s here.
Yeah.
Roaring 20s.
The
and all I
roaring
have
20s.
to say to dear listeners, thank you for listening today. And arrivederci. That's
Party
Italian.
like Jay Gatsby. That is it for Ferrari. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a follow and a 5-star review. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. And like we mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, we have a Patreon if you want to support us directly. And you can always find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links are in the description. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Alla prossima.
Ciao.
Mille, mille.